Amen. We are going to be in the Haftarah this week for this week's Parsha. So Haftarah Vayera, 2 Kings chapter 4, which we just heard read. But we're not going to start there. We're going to start actually in 1 Kings 18. So if you want to kind of put your finger in both places, 2 Kings 4 and 1 Kings 18. If you've been around for the last couple of weeks, or actually since Sukkot, you will know that since Sukkot, the theme, the kind of thing that God has really laid on my heart and that you're all subject to, you're welcome, is a focus this year or for this season, whatever it may be, on observance. On observance. And so I just want to fill you in ahead of time that for those of you that know the way I teach and have listened to me for a while, have been a part of OAM for a while, you know that when I get on something, I usually can't get off of it, and it taints or it filters everything that I teach. And if we're really focused on like temple stuff, then I see temple all over the place. Or we're really focused on justice, and the justice is all over the place. Or whatever the things may be. And so the next handful of teachings are probably going to have to do with observance. So if that's not your thing, then just know that coming up. That's just kind of where I'm going to be, because I feel like it's incredibly important, and it may be only incredibly important for me. And so just consider me teaching to myself, and if you get anything out of it, then Baruch Hashem, then that's just an added benefit. But I don't think it's just for me. So I'm going to tell you the punchline to today's teaching before I even start, and it's observance. But we'll get there together. So as we go throughout the next weeks, I want to break down what I mean by observance a little bit more and give you guys a little bit more teeth so that you can have something to kind of focus on, and maybe it will be helpful for you. So in this week's Haftarah, we have the story of Elisha. And we have in this particular Haftarah, we have two miracles, two things that happen. We have the filling of the jars of oil. How many of you have heard 1,000 sermons on that, right? And faith and woo, right? And then we have the Shunammite woman, right? These are two sections here in this chapter that are, in some circles, religious circles, are preached on a lot, having to do with a couple of things. Number one, anytime that faith is discussed, these two passages are usually some of the ones that are pulled up to really talk about faith, right? The faith of the prophet's wife and the faith of the Shunammite woman. We're going to talk about what that looks like. And then secondly, miracles. Miracles. And I'm not going to break your heart too bad this week, but that one might be coming. But we're going to talk a little bit about miracles and about what this looks like. So, we just read from the Haftarah, from Vayera. But to get some backstory, we're going to come back here, but I want to go back to 1 Kings. So if you've pulled up 1 Kings, this is part of the first introductions to the prophet Elijah. And so Verse 1 says, "Now it was after many days that the word of Adonai came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go show yourself to Ahab. Then I will send rain on the land." So just real quick backstory. Elijah comes and he proclaims a drought in the land, right? And you have the other two main players in the story, Ahab and Jezebel, right, which are the king and queen. And so God is saying, go show yourself to Ahab, and then he'll send rain. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab, and now the famine was severe in Samaria. Hanok has talked about this. He talks about this every time he comes. But just given the current state of affairs, everyone understand that if you look at a map of Israel, modern day Israel, and you see this huge part cut out that says West Bank, and then you read in your Bible and it says something about Judea or Samaria, that is the same area, okay? The term West Bank, I don't even like to use. I don't use it. We call it Judea and Samaria because that's what it is. The term West Bank was given to it by the Jordanians because it's to the west of their borders. So we're talking about Samaria here. So we're in what is modern day called the West Bank. It's the biblical Samaria. Verse 3, Ahab summoned Obadiah. Obadiah, who was the steward of the palace. Now Obadiah feared Adonai greatly. For when Jezebel was cutting off the prophets of Adonai, Obadiah took 100 prophets, hid 50 of them in a cave, 50 to a cave rather, and provided them with bread and water. So let's talk about Obadiah a little bit because he's actually going to be really important in this whole story. Obadiah is the top official in the king's court, in the king's house. Now, what do you notice about the name in English, Obadiah? It's got Yah in it, right? So there's going to be something there. So what does Obadiah's name mean? Well, it's, of course, the construction of two Hebrew words, Eved Yah, which is servant of God. Okay? And so the weird thing, the cool thing about Obadiah is that Obadiah, here in this story, is an Edomite. He's from Edom. Now, those of you that remember your history real well, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Who is Edom? I remember? Esau, right? Edom is Esau. So think about what you have here. Remember how I tell you all the time that the Bible is the story about one family in one little place, right? So here you have long-distance cousins, King Ahab and Obadiah. Obadiah is an Edomite. You can trace, so here you have the two, you have Jacob and Esau thing happening all over again, right? This is the same family, all in one place, okay? And so Obadiah gets promoted, and the story is that Obadiah is incredibly wealthy. He's a man of great wealth, and he uses this wealth to house these 100 prophets, the safety of Jezebel, okay? In verse 5, it says, Then Ahab said to Obadiah, Go throughout all the land, all the springs of water, and to all the wadis. Perhaps we may find grass, and so keep the horses and mules alive, and not lose all the animals. It's interesting when people say, well, we're killing prophets, but we want to make sure we don't want to lose the animals. Right? You can see some kind of distorted thinking like that today. Oh, well. So verse 6, so they divided the land between them to explore it, and Ahab went one way by himself, while Obadiah went the other way by himself. As Obadiah was on the road, all of a sudden Elijah met him, and he recognized him, and he fell on his face and said, Is it you, my Lord Elijah? It is I, he answered. Go tell your Lord, look, Elijah is here. I love this. How have I sinned? He replied. That you are giving your servant into the hand of Ahab to put me to death? In other words, what's your problem? What's up, bruh? As Adonai your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my master has not sent to search for you. And when they said, he is not here, he made that kingdom or nation swear that they could not find you. Now you're saying, go tell your Lord, look, Elijah is here. But as soon as I leave you, the Ruach Adonai may carry you off where I wouldn't know. Then when I come and tell Ahab, and he can't find you, he'll kill me. Now I, your servant, have feared Adonai since my youth. Now we read over little statements like this, but think about this. Obadiah is an Edomite. He's feared Hashem from his youth. So Obadiah is probably not really his real name, his given name. It's probably a name given to him. Verse 13, wasn't my Lord told that what I did when Jezebel slaughtered the prophets of Adonai, how I hid 100 of Adonai's prophets, 50 to a cave, and provided them with bread and water? So now you say, go tell your Lord, look, Elijah's here, he'll kill me. Then Elijah said, As Adonai Sabaoth lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. Then Ahab went to meet Elijah. Now when Ahab saw Elijah, and Ahab said to him, is it you, the one who causes trouble for Israel, you troubler of Israel? But he answered, I have not troubled Israel. Rather, it is you and your father's house, by forsaking the mitzvot of Adonai and going after Baalim. So why do we read that? We're talking about Elijah, Joe. Why are we reading about Elijah and about Obadiah? Because I'm slowly starting to fall in love with Obadiah. You might recognize the name and you might be asking yourself, wait, is this the same Obadiah? By the way, you know that we have a book in our Bible written by a guy named Obadiah, right? I mean, nobody ever reads it, but I just want you to know it's there. It's in the same group with like Habakkuk and, some of those that nobody ever reads. Okay, but you should. So Jewish history tells us that this is the same Obadiah that is the prophet Obadiah who writes one chapter that we are given in his prophecy. And Obadiah's prophecy is all about the destruction of Edom. It's all about the destruction of his homeland, of his roots. Why does God take this non-Israelite and use him as a prophet? Because Obadiah earned this prophecy by his merit, because he sacrificed his own life, his own standing, and his own riches, history tells us, in order to save the prophets from the naughty Jezebel. And so because of Obadiah's merit, he was able to earn the privilege of prophecy, of this one prophecy in particular against Edom. So why is that all important? Well, when we come to 2 Kings chapter 4, it starts out by saying, a certain woman from among the wives of the prophets cried out to Elisha. Now, you guys know I love Jewish literature. I love the way that the Jewish people strings things together and make connections. Who is this certain woman? Well, Jewish history tells us, the sages tell us that this woman is Mrs. Obadiah. Now, let's look at what it says about her. It says that after in 1 Kings, we hear about Obadiah and Ahab, and they're coming together, and they're searching for Elijah, and they find him, and Elijah meets with Ahab, and they have this, you did it, no, you did it, it's your fault, no, it's your fault, kind of thing, and then we never hear about Obadiah again. He's never mentioned again until you get all the way almost to the end of the Tanakh, and then his book pops up, but he's never mentioned again. And so this certain woman it says that she is a wife of the prophets, or a wife of the disciple of the prophets. And it says that her husband has died, and that Elisha, that your servant was God-fearing. So what is in the text that we don't see because we just read past? You have a wife whose husband is dead. She has 2 sons. And she tells Elisha, your servant feared God. You know that your servant feared God. Which means that Elisha knows whoever this prophet is. Knows well enough to know his fear of God. And so, even in the English, without the Hebrew, without the tradition, without all the things, we can kind of start to see how we can put these people together. And it says that the creditors have come to take her 2 sons. So, like I said, Obadiah is this man of great wealth and great riches, and he uses that wealth and riches to save and to feed and to take care of the prophets until he runs out of money. It happens to the best of it. Does it happen to you? Happens to me. You run out of money. Obadiah spends his wealth, his energy, his life to save the prophets of Hashem. Now, remember what the prophets are doing at this point, which is why Ahab and Jezebel are all in their comeuppance about the prophets in the beginning, why their britches are all in a twist. The prophets are consistently speaking against the king, which is sadly one of the things that the prophets do. When the king is righteous, the prophets go, yay, all hail the king, the throne of David. And when the king is naughty, the prophet goes, God's going to exact revenge unless you make shuvah, unless you turn. Well, this happened to be a situation where this couple was naughty, and the prophets are speaking against them, so Jezebel said, well, we'll just kill them. That's easy enough to do. And so you have Obadiah, who is one in the house, who is also protecting. It's interesting because we see this thing over and over again. This is a theme you can look at in Scripture, right? So you have someone who is not of the house of Israel, who is surrendered himself or herself to Hashem and working inside the nation, but is not a natural-born citizen. The most famous one I can think of is Caleb, right? Who stands in opposition to the other 10 spies and says, God said we can do it, guys. What's going on? And to me, the backstory of that is, wait, you guys were born in this thing and you don't believe it? I'm an outsider and I believe it, right? We see this all over. So that's one kind of thread of this theme we can see. There's another theme here as well, though, of one on the inside that is standing against the power and standing with those that are oppressed. So the first one I think about is Moses. He's inside, he's raised in Egypt, he's not one of them, right? Same kind of story as Obadiah. He's not one of them, he's raised inside, and yet something happens in his life, and he meets with Hashem, and now all of a sudden he has a protection for these Hebrew slaves, right? Think about the story of Joseph, right? The story of Joseph, where Joseph is taken and he's raised in a house that is not his. And he finally meets his brothers, and then all of a sudden, now he serves as the protector for the Israelites that come into the land. You see what I'm saying? You see the themes that we have here? So we call both of those, in both of those instances of Moses and Joshua, those are Yeshua-type figures. Those are salvation-type figures. Those are what we would call Tzaddikim, right? Righteous ones. And I think we see the same thing with Obadiah. Obadiah is this man who risks everything to the point to where, again, Jewish tradition tells us that once Obadiah had spent all of his riches and all of his wealth, he began borrowing in order to be able to take care of the prophets and the sons of the prophets. He went into enormous amounts of debt. Now, if this is Mrs. Obadiah that we're talking about here in 2 Kings, how does Obadiah die? Well, nobody's clear. But according to the sages, Obadiah dies from the harassment of the creditors. There's no bankruptcy protection. You can't go like, oh, chapter 7, sorry guys, it's all good. The harassment of the creditors drives Obadiah to his death. In essence, he's persecuted to death for doing the right thing. And then we find his wife. The creditors don't stop when Obadiah is dead. Now, a generation later, we find these same creditors coming now after his own sons, because they're sons of the prophet. Let me ask you this question. What happens when we've been as faithful as we know to be, when we have been as consistent as we know to be, when we've been as observant when we know to be, and yet we find ourselves in a place where we are empty? She runs to Elisha the prophet because she's empty. She has no money. She has no possessions. She has no thing that is of value in order to save her sons. What do we do when we've been as faithful and as consistent and as observant and as all the things as we're supposed to be, and yet we're empty? We're bankrupt. What do you mean by empty? You know what I mean by empty. The big one that gets a lot of play is spiritual. I'm just spiritually empty, which usually means what? I have no vision. I can't hear God. I don't get anything out of the scripture when I read. I just have no zing for, anything spirit. I'm just spiritually empty. But it's my experience, and take my wisdom for whatever you will. But I think a lot of times that spiritual emptiness is not what our problem is. I don't think spiritual emptiness maybe even is a thing. I think a lot of times what we mean when we talk about being empty, and we're looking for a miracle, we're looking for something to happen, we're looking for a next, okay, show me that things are working, God, you're there, and I'm still a part of your plan, and I still matter to you. What we usually mean there is not that we're spiritually hurting, but we're usually emotionally hurting. We're usually mentally empty. We're usually emotionally bankrupt. Some of the times that you feel the furthest away from God is whenever you've been so busy all week long, you've been distracted away from prayer, from scripture study, you've been taking care of the kids, you've been working overtime at work, and by the time you get home, you barely make it into the door and sit down in your chair or sit down on the sofa, eat supper, and then you're asleep. Or mentally, you've had appointments and you've had stuff at the school with kids and you've had this and you've had confrontation all week and you've had all the things mentally and you just have had no space. You start Sunday and you go, it's going to be a great week, and then Monday hits and Monday doesn't stop until Friday night. When I worked in the secular world, I would say, oh God, it's Monday. I'd say, just pray it's not a whole week full of them. That's all I just want to make sure it's not a week of Mondays. Because you have those weeks. And it's those times where you hit Friday night. And you go, God, I know it's Shabbat, but I just don't have it in me. But that is not a spiritual deficit. Your body has been taxed all week. You're physically exhausted. Mentally, your mind has been attacked all week. It is so full and corroded of all the worries and cares that you have to take care of. Emotionally, maybe you've been abused or harassed or bullied, or you've just had an upheaval in your emotions, and your emotions are everywhere but at peace, where they're supposed to be. And you enter the Shabbat and you go like, I'm supposed to enter the Shabbat like this? I'm a wreck. I'm empty. What are some of the traditional answers to what do you do in that space? Well, when you're hurting, when you're empty, when you have a need, whenever you are looking for a miracle, what's the one thing that we're all told? You have to have more faith. And I don't know about you, but that's the most wrong answer you can give me whenever I'm hurting. Of all the wrong answers you could give me, of all the terrible advice you could give me when I'm hurting, when I'm empty, when I'm at my end, when I'm desperate, is have more faith, brother. Why don't I take my brother foot and kick you in the brother teeth? Because that's about how it makes me feel when I'm desperate. Because what does faith mean? What does that mean? Well, to the people that are giving you that advice, what they usually mean is, well, believe more. And I just want to ask, well, that's great. How in God's name do you do that? And I've said this before. I haven't said it in a while, so I'll several churches I've been a part of, you have an altar call every week. You guys probably been a part of something like that, where people come to the altar. And there's a prayer team or ministry or prayer counselors or whatever they call them, right? And they pray with you. Maybe it's for sickness, maybe it's for emotion, whatever it is. They pray with. It's a beautiful thing, okay? But I can't count on, I have all 10 fingers and all 10 toes, and that's still not enough to count the amount of times in my time where I've seen prayer counselors, people just these people that come to the altar are desperate, sometimes dragging themselves to the altar. They're so desperate for a move of God, for hope, for encouragement, for something, the clouds to break and there be some kind of freshness on the other side. And what they're told is, receive, have more faith, have more faith. And I don't know what that looks like. I'm kind of a practical guy, so and I'm not trying to make fun. These are things that I've actually thought. I've tried these things. So it may sound like I'm making fun. I'm not. I've been so desperate where I thought, well, having more faith must mean squeezing really, really hard. Like maybe if I close my eyes harder, and maybe if I try to summon what's the anime? Where's Bella would know? The alchemist thing. Yeah, when he goes. Oh shucks, I lost it. Anyway, Super Saiyan. Maybe if I squeeze tight enough, maybe my faith can go like Super Saiyan. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Like 2 people get it. So, I don't know. I don't know. What does having more faith look? Does it mean crying more? Does it mean, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like to have more faith. And people go, well, you just need to receive. That's the problem. And they go, well, how do I do that? Well, you have to put your hands like this. Like this is when you praise, but this is when you receive. We actually tell people this stuff. We tell people that are broken and hurting and desperate and empty. We make them play a game of charades. Have more faith, brother. Yeah, we want our people are stay broken and stay hurting. And so the question then becomes, is faith belief or action? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. But in what order and in what proportion? And these are things that we don't ever ask and we don't ever talk about. The answer is faith, belief, or action. The answer is yes, B, all of the above, or C, all of the above. But the question is in what order? Because that one's important. And in what proportion? I have said for the last couple of weeks, your heart is not the problem. If you are in a place right now, if you're watching in your place right now where you're empty, where you're desperate, where things are not working, they're not moving, you just don't know where to go next, let me encourage you, if you're watching this morning, if you're doing the things and that you're supposed to be doing and you're in the right place, your heart is 99.9% not the problem. I know that's what we want to beat ourselves up about. Is my heart okay? Is my heart? My God, your heart is okay. And I want to add this little detail that your belief is not the problem. Your belief is not the problem. What do you mean by that? If you didn't believe in God and you didn't have faith, you didn't believe in the scripture, you wouldn't be sitting here this morning. There's 1,000 other places that you could be. There's 1,000 better places you could be. You're taking out 2 hours out of your day to sit in front of your phone or your computer to watch somebody you've probably never met in a town you've never been to. Don't worry, you're not missing a whole lot. It's a good place. It's just like, okay. And you think that your heart is the problem or your belief is the problem? If your heart is the problem and your belief is the problem, then we're all doomed, because we're all here. We're all in the process. We're all doing the things that we and believing, and we all know the things that we know. And so, what is the key? What is the thing? Well, I want to read this. You're all going to think I'm nuts for just about the next 10 minutes. Okay. I've never really talked about stuff like this before, but I just think this is interesting. So, just a caution, I'm going to be talking about Kabbalah for the next about 10 minutes. I know everybody gets scared, think I'm a heretic, he's gone off the deep end, right? What is he doing? Please don't go there. Okay, so just real super quick. What is Kabbalah? Well, the word Kabbalah means to welcome, right? We do a service, or whenever you do light candles and make Kiddush in your home, it's Erev Shabbat, but it's called Kabbalat Shabbat. You're welcoming in Shabbat, the welcome of Shabbat, okay? The embrace, right? And we describe Kabbalah in Judaism, and it's described as Jewish mysticism, which I hate that term because it makes it sound like Jews are sitting in dark rooms with a crystal ball and they're practicing Kabbalah. You're like, that's stupid. So there's two main streams of Kabbalah in the world today. There's a kosher stream and there's a non-kosher stream. The non-kosher stream is the one made popular by, what's her name? Madonna. Thank you. By Madonna, yeah. When Madonna starts talking, just change the thing or whatever. But what is Jewish mysticism? Well, in a lot of ways, it's the same as Christian mysticism. Wait, we don't have that in our side of the family. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You get somebody, a new convert, somebody that just got saved, and what's the first book of the Bible we tell them to read? The book of John. The worst book probably to start with, because John is all mystical. That's what the book of John is. It's mystical. What is mysticism? What is this? Mysticism, we have the text, we have the plain meaning of the text, the Peshat, and then we have, what does it mean? And then we have, what does it mean to me? 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years separated from it. And then we have, what does it mean in the context of all of existence? Mysterious, isn't it? Mysticism, right? Kabbalah is not Jews like rubbing sticks together and doing chants and it's not voodoo. I don't know what we get all weird about it. Oh, they study Kabbalah. There's some kind of lepers. We have crazier things in Christianity in a lot of ways than they have in Kabbalah within Judaism, right? A lot of the stuff we believe in Christianity is not in the Bible. Did you know that? A lot of the stuff, a lot of the assumptions we've come to and the doctrines that we've come to are not in Scripture. What did we do? We were practicing mysticism. We were trying to figure out how this stuff all integrates into our lives and into the universe, into creation and all that kind of stuff, okay? So these are summations of teachings from the Zohar, which is the book kind of Kabbalah. So this is how they explain this passage. And I just want you to sit with it don't judge it, just listen to it as we kind of work through it. So it says that the certain woman, or the one woman here, can be related to neshama, or the soul. Now, this soul, neshama, in Hebrew is feminine. And so the soul is thought of as a woman or a princess, okay? And so when the Second King says a woman, one woman, a certain woman, then Kabbalah takes that as to mean, this can mean our soul, okay? And by the way, neshama, the soul, is not something that you have, it's something that you are, okay? The soul is of the wives of the prophets, which it says here in 2 Kings, so called because it is an extension of God himself. Now listen to this. Your soul, God says that we were created, what? In his image and in his likeness. Those two are very important together, right? In essence, we are an extension of who God is himself. And so the wives of the prophets, being the neshama, the soul, is an extension of God himself, okay? So that's one. Number two, the name Elisha means turning to my God. As the soul within us, or us being a soul, turns to God and says, Houston, we have a problem. We got a problem. What is the prophet's job? The prophet is not mostly even to applaud when things are good, but the prophet's job is to point out where things need to be turned. That's what the prophet does. The prophet points out and says, you need to return here, you need to return here. This is why, people today want to be prophets, which means they want to dress in $1,000 suits and drive $80,000 foreign vehicles and have an entourage and a blah, 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 whatever. But a real true prophet, biblical prophet, was chased out of town, hunted, beheaded, burned alive, upside down, feet cut off, whatever, etc. We don't want to be those kind of prophets. We want to be the evangelistic kind of prophets, which is silly. So the prophet Elisha and the neshama are working together. Now, the woman makes a statement, Avdecha ishi met, which means your servant, Avdecha, your servant, ishi, my husband, met, has died. Okay? In Kabbalistic thinking, the intellect or wisdom, Chokmah, is referred to as father, Av, or husband, Ish. So, just stay with me. Your soul, your being, your essence is, neshama, is considered feminine. Your intellect, your chokmah, is masculine. This is the way that the human is put together. And so the soul, neshama, the woman, says to Hashem, my intellect, my wisdom, my intellectual commitment to you is dead. I can't figure out the next move. I can't figure out how to fill what's empty. I'm desperate and I don't know which way to go. I don't know which way to turn. I don't know what's the next move. I'm scared of moving and I don't know what to, I don't have the desire to study. I don't have the desire to pray. I don't have the desire to give. I'm just done. I'm just empty. She goes on to say, and the collectors have come to take my 2 sons. And so, if the intellectual realm, the soul and the intellect is compared to parents, then who are the sons? Well, let me ask you this. The intellect and the soul, or the living for God, should produce love and fear. Those are the 2 things that God says. Love Him and fear Him. Love and fear are the offspring. They are the sons of a life that is intellectually engaged in the study of the Word of God, and one that is not only intellectually engaged, but living it as a soul, and a neshama is living. And so the soul cries out, and this is where I got to earlier, where I was talking about your spiritual deficit not being the problem, maybe. But when we're in these times and these seasons where we're empty, where we're flailing, where we're desperate, what it is our soul crying out because we've been so inundated with the impurities of life around us that they have deadened and killed almost, or maybe altogether, any kind of emotional and loving, fearful connection that we have to God. What is that? What do those impurities look like? Well, maybe for me, sometimes it's too much news. It's the consideration of all the things that the government is doing or not doing. And I know this is some people's thing, and I don't want to discourage you, or I'm not making fun of you or anything, but I know more conspiracy theories are not theories, and they're not conspiracies, they're true. But for me, I know me, and I know how I'm wired, and if I start down that trail, I just completely get buried. I can't pull myself. I get to a place where I can't pull myself out. Then I get paranoid, and I get fearful, and I get itchy, and I get anxious, and I get really twitchy, and things start to not be good in my life, right? So maybe it's, and those things, although sometimes they're true, they can be an impurity if they affect and they deaden our sensitivity to Hashem. Maybe it's toxic relationships. Maybe it's places that you go. Maybe it's, let's just be honest, maybe it's your physical health. Maybe it's things you eat or don't eat or eat too much of or eat too little of or whatever it may be, but there are impurities all around us, and we get to a place of emptiness and desperation. It's like our soul is crying out. We have been dead and killed by the impurities around us. You know, how many of you ever owned a fish tank? Everybody have a fish tank? Okay, a couple of you are foolish enough to have a fish tank. Because it's a lot of work, right? What happens if you don't clean it for, a little while? Well, it starts to get kind of cloudy, right? And then there's a slight little film that develops on the glass. And then you leave it and don't clean it. And that film just gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker until you can't see inside. And what we have to understand is that, we talk about Yom Kippur and how, Kippurim, the atonement is like to wipe, right? To cleanse, because we're cleansing the temple for Yom Kippur because of our impurities that we brought in. Well, in the same way, we have to be occasionally wiped. We have our soul, our nephesh, our very existence, our essence has to be wiped clean because of the impurities of life. Because if in that fish tank, if that stuff continues to build up, eventually whatever's in it that was living is not going to be living. And in the same way, in our lives, as we go through life and just do life, you bump up against people that rub you the wrong way, hurt your feelings. Maybe they hack you off and you're ticked off for the next week. And they probably don't even know they did it. Maybe it's somebody driving too slow in the left lane. I don't know. Just an example. Maybe you have trouble with a family member. Maybe you have trouble with your spouse, and it's just, in the house, it's just tension and just unease. Listen, I've been married for 21 years, right? It happens. Some of you have been married a lot longer than that. So I hope just by this little aside, you can see that we've just talked about Kabbalah. Oh, I know it's really scary, right? But it's really not. It's trying to understand the interplay between the text of the word, the kind of dry literal meaning of the word, and how are we supposed to understand this? What can this speak to us today, and what can it mean to us today? And I think that this does a really good job, because thinking about our lives as walking around in impurity, and it just deadens us and it kills us and it makes us to where we become empty. So let's talk about observance. The key to emptiness is observance. It's doing the things. God said, hey, do these things. And we said, okay, we'll do those things. And then we get to a place where we're empty, and then we stop doing the things that we were supposed to be doing in the first place. And it's funny to me how we are so belief-oriented, so mental, cerebrally oriented as Western Christians. And we're so anti-works because most of us grew up with this faith versus works type of dichotomy when there's no such thing. That's a false argument. There's no argument to be had there. I don't even understand what we have. The point of that is absolutely, there's no point. It's pointless. Because we're not talking about whether we're working for salvation. That has all been settled. I'm talking to people here who are saved. If I was talking to people who are unsaved, this would be a different conversation. I'm talking about people who are saved. The problem is we go, well, you can't do things to get saved. And we go, yep, absolutely right. And we go, well, now that we are saved, the things are still not good. And we go, what? That's not how it works. It's not the way life works in general. It's certainly not the way God and the Bible works. It's interesting in this movement. The things that we fight and divide over the most are observances. The things that has kept the Torah movement, and I use that word loosely because I think it's just about all but dead. The thing that's kept the Torah movement from really, as I've said before, I believe that the Torah awakening among non-Jews is the last day revival that we've all been praying for. That in the 20s, whenever they were setting up tents and brush arbors down in Singer, Louisiana, and DeQuincy, and the Spirit was moving, and all these things were happening, which is why we have so many churches, by the way. When all these things were happening, when I was growing up, and we had tent revival, and we had, we scheduled revivals on the church calendar. We're going to have revival, then, and we're just going to pray for God to show up. and all these things, all these revivals that we've been begging, the church has been begging for the last 100 years, I believe the Torah awakening amongst non-Jews is that revival. I believe it with all my heart, which makes it so grievous that we have just about killed it. We've just about killed it. The non-Jewish Torah awakening is on life support right now. And I believe it's because we could never get together. I've talked to people all the time. They go, well, I'm thinking about moving to Arkansas, man. They got a great Torah community up there. And my question is, which one? Because frankly, I don't know of one Torah community in Arkansas. There's a bunch of Torah people up there, but none of them can get along. You know why? Observance. Because this one pronounces the name this way, and this one pronounces the name that way. Because this one keeps this calendar, and this one keeps this calendar, and this one keeps a calendar nobody's ever heard of before because they got the truth. Because this one believes the earth is a donut hole, this one believes the earth is a donut without the hole, this one believes the earth is a pear, and this one believes the earth is shaped like a dinner plate. Because this one doesn't light candles because the Bible never tells us, commands us as we pray to light candles. Because this one thinks Shabbat starts in the morning instead of the night before. Because, it's maddening. It's maddening. We have aborted the last day, or come close to aborting because God is still king, the last day revival that Hashem has wanted to give because of observance. And here's what I think. I think we fight over observance, what does observance mean? It means doing. Doing. It really doesn't have anything to do with what you think or what you believe. It's what you do. I don't care what you believe. What do you do? And I almost think that we fight over observance. We fight over how we're supposed to do the commandments. And I don't mean fight like in a healthy way. Like there's healthy debate over how we should do things, and that's cool. I'm all for that. But that's not it. This is nasty, nasty business. And most of you have never been involved in it, thankfully, and I'll say because of OAM. You're welcome. But some of you have been out there in the Hebrew roots Messianic world, and you know how nasty it can be. People will ruin your entire family name because you say Hashem instead of Yahashua Shamalama Ding Dong or something. I don't know, whatever the pronunciation is supposed to be. People, they will destroy your entire reputation over it. And maybe it's we fight over what we do so we can stay cerebral. We can sit and have all these keyboard warrior debates about how you're supposed to believe, and we never have to do anything. We never actually have to show what we believe, because that's the truth about doing. If you don't do anything, no one can tell what you really believe. If you don't have a ritual that you practice, nobody can tell what you really believe. But here's side B to that cassette tape, is that if you don't have a ritual, you don't really know what you believe. We claim to believe things, but we never move in that direction. Elisha tells the woman, Miss Obadiah, go and do things. He never gives her a discourse on belief. He doesn't say, well, your husband lost his life fighting the good fight. Now, the least you could do is believe. I mean, shame on you for not having enough faith. What would your husband think? I have I know of spouses that have been told, well, your spouse died of cancer because you didn't have enough faith. And I know that's not the common thing, but that happens all too much. Well, you lost your job because you didn't have enough faith. While these people are sitting in church every morning, in the altar every week, what? He doesn't give her a discourse on belief. He doesn't make sure her heart is right before he tells her what to do. He doesn't, as far as we know, according to Scripture, they don't have any conversation. He just says, you have a problem, here's what you start doing. Start doing the things. I find it funny that in both accounts in this parsha, there's a refrain that keeps on happening. I don't know if you heard it, if you pick up on it, but if you go home and read it again, you'll hear it. In the first one, he tells the woman, what? Get your sons, you and your sons, and go in the room and do what? Did you read it? Close the door. And it says, so she took her and her sons and she went in the room and she closed the door, right? With the Shunammite woman and her son, what happens? He says, bring him up to the thing and lay him down and close the door, right? And he tells Gehazi, take the staff and go in and close the door. And so Elisha, goes in and he closes the door. What is it about closing the door? I don't care what you do or what you believe. It doesn't make really two hill of beans to me. But God knows whether you're lying to yourself or not. And maybe more importantly, you know whether you're lying to yourself or not. See, we do stuff as a community, and I think that's incredibly important. We are privileged enough to be able to have and celebrate Shabbat together as a community. But there are a lot of people out there. There are a lot of people around here that you've never even heard of that are doing this, and they don't have anybody. Don't let the fact that we have a community handicap us from taking personal responsibility and the observances that we that are important to us, that we do behind closed doors, that we do in private. That we not say like, oh, I'm going to Shabbat, blah, 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 blah. And you did everything since the sun set on last night, you did everything but acknowledge Shabbat. But you're here this morning. How about doing stuff behind closed doors? The prophets often, and I'm going a little bit long, the prophets, you see them all the time. They do something like what Elisha does right here. Elisha doesn't speak and he is healed and he rises, right? He doesn't pray to God in a, humble request and the boy lives. What does he do? He lays on him all weird, like it's weird. It's weird. What's that? Yeah, he paces around the room, like he huffs and puffs, and then he lays on him and he breathes. And you see the prophets doing stuff like this all the time. What was the one prophet that laid on his side for Elijah? Yeah, he lays on his side and they learn, what is, the Bible Project, Dr. Tim Mackey calls them sign acts. There's a message given that you can't see. But the prophet is enacting that message in the physical. And what I'm telling you about observance is that sometimes we have to act out the things that we can't see, whether we believe or understand, who knows? Rabbi Schneerson, also called the Rebbe in the Chabad sphere of Judaism, started a thing in his time where it was called the Mitzvah Campaign, I think is what it was called. And it was a thing where if you were Jewish, if you were in the grocery store or whatever, you'd go up to another person and go, hey, are you Jewish? And if they say, yeah, you go, well, let's wrap tefillin together. The arm and let's wrap tefillin together. Or if you scrape somebody Jewish and go, hey, oh, you're Jewish, great. Do you like candles? And they would talk about observance. It was a way of bolstering and encouraging because American Jews are like all Americans, like, hey, leave me alone. My business is my business. What I do is up to me. Don't get in my business. But it was a way of starting to break down those walls and actually become accountable in community, right? And so there arose some questions among his disciples, and they said, well, instead of just asking somebody to wrap tefillin, shouldn't you sit down and have a conversation about wrapping tefillin and about prayer and stuff? And And the Rebbe said, no, doing comes before understanding. So you go, we'll do the things together, and then we'll talk about why we're doing them. Doing comes before understanding. I'll close with this. This is a quote that I absolutely love. It says, personal activity has to be in line with the miracle you're believing for, and that you're asking of God. If you do not move in the direction you're asking God to move in, you're not expecting a miracle, you're expecting magic. You are not acting in faith, but wishful thinking. See, we have this issue of believing one thing and doing another thing and thinking, well, God will work it all out. But what if God has given us the potential and the ability and the authority and the license to do our own miracles? What if you have right now in your life the potential to experience the miracle that you need? All it takes is getting off your spiritual butt. Or not even your spiritual butt, getting off your physical butt and doing some stuff. I have long told you guys, let's just take Shabbat for an example, and I know I said I was closing. This is my second time. I know I've talked about Shabbat, and we've tried to be very careful with OAM about being balanced, about, you can't, let's just face it, all stuff is on Shabbat. Everything is on Shabbat. Kids' sports, family stuff, all that. And I've been really careful, we've been really careful to not say, well, you know what, it's God's Shabbat, to hell with the rest of it. Family, activities, whatever. No, it's Shabbat. You do Shabbat at the cost of everything else. We've been very careful not to be that way because your family is important and your kids are important. And so we have to understand that we don't live in the land under the theocracy where Shabbat or we don't even live in modern day Israel where on Shabbat everything shuts down. It's ghost town in Israel. We don't have that luxury, so we have to find a way to be able to do more than one thing at a time. But I will say this. If you live how you're supposed to live, then your family should know. Just because you can't go to this function with them, that you don't hate them. That you don't despise them, that you're not judging them. But they should know that this is my Sabbath. And if you want me to be a part, maybe think about scheduling something on another day. See, we've tried to be, and we have been. We've been courteous, and we've been hospitable, and we've been gracious to our family and friends and to our kids, and we've tried to we've sacrificed not being at Shabbat because everything happens on Saturday in our world. What is that really, though, telling our friends and family? That this is optional and all the other stuff is not. In our heart of hearts, we're trying to maybe share a little bit and be copacetic and trying to be hospitable and all that. But maybe what the world's really seeing is that, well, this is optional. This is just something that you do, but if there's something more important, then you do that. But more important than what the world sees, what is it telling you? What is it telling you whenever you can miss Shabbat or break Shabbat for just anything? What are you hearing in yourself? What is it reinforcing in you? One of the reasons why you're not maybe as secure in your identity as a Torah follower as you should be is because you compromise too much. Maybe you just break Shabbat, and I remember, I'm not talking about being at OAM for Shabbat. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the 25 hours of Shabbat. Maybe the ox in the ditch. There's a lot more ox out there than I ever even dreamed were in existence. There's oxes everywhere. Oxen everywhere? Whatever. I don't English well. But maybe you're not secure in your Torah observance because maybe it really isn't as important to you as you say it is. And maybe it's time in this place in your life to start telling people, I'm sorry, that's my Sabbath, and I can't, we can get together Sunday, or we can get together Tuesday afternoon, or whatever. And why do I harp on Shabbat? Because it is the first, the highest of all of the holy days, and it should be the center of our universe. And as you start making the Shabbat more holy, then it will center you even more and more and more and more. Y'all didn't hear that, so Kyle said at the end of the day, compromise is ritual. That's right. The more you do it, the easier it gets. That's right, and it reinforces behavior. Well, there you go. That's the end. That's all we needed to hear. So, we'll meme that at some point. So, if you're empty, find something to observe and make that ritual a part of your life. I think it will make all the difference in the world.